everybody. Here's the next part of the Watsons Go to Birmingham. My Adam's apple felt like it was going to blow a hole in my throat, but I said, I did go to the church, Byron. I saw what happened. I saw two of those little girls, and I thought they killed Joey, too. We all did, Kenny. There ain't nothing wrong with being sad or scared about that. I'm sad about it, too. I got real scared, too. But no one's going to hurt you here, Kenny. But I try to think how to say it. I'm not scared. I'm just real ashamed of myself. That was it. That was the main thing I'd finally found out for being a patient in the world famous Watson Pet Hospital. Annie, you ain't got nothing to be ashamed of. But you don't know what happened, Byron. You don't know what I did. Man, everybody cried. Mama was crying. Dad was scared. He cried too. That was some real scary stuff. That was some real sad stuff. He still didn't understand. Byron, I left Joey. I thought the whirlpool had her, and instead of fighting him like you did, I left. I ran from him. How come you were brave enough to fight him, and all I could do was run? All I could save was a shoe. A stupid, ripped up shoe. I couldn't stop crying. Oh man, you're not going to start talking about that whirlpool mess again, are you? I told you the whirlpool was some made up garbage. I told you the only one I was fighting in the water was you. There wasn't no one in that water but you and me. That's what you think, but I know better. I've seen him twice. I couldn't believe Byron was still talking to me. Most of the time, if I started sounding weepy and whiny, he'd take right off. Look, Henny, if you don't quit talking like that, sorry, I lost my spot. If you don't quit talking like that, I'm going to leave you in here to cry all alone. There's no such thing as the Woolpoo. Then he stopped sounding so mean and said, and there ain't no such thing as magic powers either. I was surprised he'd brought up the magic powers. You think I don't know why you've been hanging out behind the couch? He grabbed my ear and twisted my head until I had to look at him. You think I don't know that you're waiting for some magic powers or genies or angel to make you feel better? Dig this. You can wait behind that couch for the rest of your life, and ain't no magic powers gonna come back there and make you feel nothing. Only thing that's gonna happen back there is that you're gonna stunt your growth from being a little ball all day. He pulled my ear to make sure I was listening. If you've been spending so much time thinking about how you didn't save Joey, why don't you stop and think about why she wasn't in that church? Why don't you spend some time thinking about who it was that led her away? But it wasn't me, Byron. I never. Would you be quiet and listen? He twisted my ear to make me be quiet. There's no genies in this world, Kenny. No magic powers. There don't even seem to be angels in this neighborhood, anyway. I just don't get you. You're supposed to be the one who's so smart. How can you believe in something like magic powers and genies living behind a couch, but not believe that it was a part of you that took Joetta out of that church? Byron started throwing me curveballs. If you hadn't been born, who would have took her away from that bomb? No one. If you hadn't been born and she walked out of that hot church and saw some stranger waving at her from across the street, do you think she would have followed him? No. She'd have gone right back in there. If you hadn't been born, who would have gone in that church to see if Joey really was in there? Me and Mom and Dad were all too scared. You were the only one brave enough to go in there. Every time he made a point, he twisted my ear to make me understand better. But Byron, what about those other kids? It's just not fair. You know they had brothers and sisters and mamas and daddies who loved them just as much as we love Joey. How come no one came and got them out of that church? How's it fair? How come their relatives couldn't come and warn them? Byron let go of my ear and thought for a second. Kenny, things ain't ever going to be fair. How's it fair that two grown men could hate Negroes so much that they'd kill some kids just to stop them from going to school? How's it fair that even the cops down there might know who did it? Nothing will probably ever happen to those men. It's not fair, but you just gotta understand that that's the way it is and keep on going. Byron let me sniff and wipe my hands across my eyes before he slid my head back onto the linoleum and stood up. He went over and got some toilet paper and wiped my tears off his leg. Then he let a couple of sheets of toilet paper float down and land on me and said, blow your nose, wash your face. You've been behind that couch long enough. It's about time you cut this mess out. Mama and Dad beginning to think You're a little behind us, seriously on the blink. Today is the day you check out of the world famous Watson Pet Hospital. Don't let me catch you back there no more. You ain't got no cause to be ashamed or scared of nothing. You're smart enough to figure this one out yourself. Besides, you getting the word from the top wolf himself. You're gonna be all right, baby brother. I swear before God. He walked over to the mirror and scrunched his face up so he could look at his chin again, then used his thumb and finger to pull that long, skinny black hair out a little bit. He let the hair go, smiled at himself, and ran his hands along his head like he was brushing his hair. I sure wish someone would come clean and tell me who my real folks was, because there's just no way two people as ugly as your mama and dad could ever have a child as fine as me. And he started laughing. Before he shut the door, I could see that Mama and Daddy and Joey were standing there in the little knot, trying not to let me know they were eavesdropping. Mama whispered, "What's going on, Vi? Why was Kenny crying like that? Is he okay?" He told her, "Kenny's gonna be cool. He's related to me, ain't he?" Byron Watson, how many times am I gonna have to tell you about saying ain't? Some of the time it was hard to figure Byron out. He was very right about some things, and he was very wrong about some things. He was very wrong when he said the whirlpool was something he'd made up. If he'd ever had his ankle grabbed by it, he'd know it was real. If he'd seen the way it was crouched down, crawling around in the dust and the smoke of the church in Birmingham, he'd know it wasn't some made up piece of garbage. And if he'd ever seen those horrible toes, he'd know the whirlpool was as serious as a heart attack. He was also very wrong about there not being anything like magic powers or genies or angels. Maybe things like maybe those weren't the things that could make a dog walk without wobbling, but they were out there. Maybe they were in the way your father smiled at you even after you messed up something real bad. Maybe they were in the way you understood that your mother wasn't trying to make you the laughing stock of the whole school when she'd call you over in front of a bunch of your friends. Maybe it was magic powers that let you know she was just being mama. Maybe they were the reason you really didn't care when the kids would say yuck, and I would just say, "That's my mama." Maybe there were genies in the way your sister would throw a tea party for you and you had fun, even though it was kind of embarrassing to sit at a little table and sip water out of plastic teacups. Maybe there were magic powers hiding in the way your older brother made all the worst thugs in the neighborhood play basketball with you, even though you double dribbled every time they threw you the ball. And I'm sure there was an angel in Birmingham when Grandma Sands wrapped her little arms around all of the weird Watsons and said, "My family, my beautiful, beautiful family." I climbed up on the toilet and leaned over the sink to take a look, and I smiled. Byron was very right about some things, too. He was very right when he said I was too smart to believe magic powers lived behind a couch. He also knew what he was talking about when he said I was going to be all right. Joetta banged on the bathroom door. "Kenny, Byron said you're feeling much better now. If that's right, come on out. I have to use the bathroom." Some of the time I wondered if there really was something wrong with me. A few minutes ago I'd been crying on the floor like a kindergarten baby, and now I was looking in the mirror laughing. I blew my nose and splashed a little water on my face because I wanted to go out. Besides, I had to think of a way to get at least half of my dinosaurs back from Rufus. Come on in, Joey. Now that's the end of the actual book, but then there's an epilogue that says, and that's a note from the author about the history of the time. At the time of the Watsons family trip, the U.S. South was caught up in a struggle for basic human rights that became known as the Civil Rights Movement. Although the Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal, and the Constitution has been amended after the Civil War to extend the rights and protections of citizenship to African Americans, changing the law of the land did not always change the way people behaved. In the northern, eastern, and western states, African Americans often faced discrimination, but it was not as extreme and pervasive. Oh, my cat is helping. Pervasive as in the South. There, communities and states passed laws that allowed discrimination in schooling, housing, and job opportunities, prohibited interracial marriages, and enforced segregation by creating separate facilities for African Americans and whites. In most of the South, African Americans were not permitted to attend the same schools or to use the same parks, playgrounds, swimming pools, hospitals, drinking fountains, or bathrooms. Hotels, restaurants, and stores would not serve African Americans. The worst sections of public facilities were set aside for what they called coloreds only. White children often attended large, well equipped modern schools, while African American students went to one room schoolhouses without enough books or teachers. The characters and events in this novel are fictional. However, there were many unsolved bombings in Birmingham at the time of the story, including the one that took place at the 16th Avenue Baptist Church on September 15th, 1963. Four teenage girls, Ada Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, were killed when a bomb went off during Sunday school. Ada Mae Collins' sister Sarah had to have an eye removed, and another girl was blinded. In the unrest that followed the bombing, two other African American children died. 16-year-old Johnny Robinson was shot, and 13-year-old Virgil Wade was murdered. Although these may be nothing more than names in a book to you now, you must remember that these children were just as precious to their families as Joetta was to the Watsons. Despite the danger, the civil rights movement grew, gaining support all over the country, and on August 28, 1963, 200,000 people marched on Washington, D.C. to pressure Congress to pass the Civil Rights Bill and heard Martin Luther King Jr. deliver his unforgettable I Have a Dream speech. The individuals who supported the civil rights movement took great risks to force America to change. It was a people's movement inspired by the courageous acts of ordinary citizens, like Rosa Parks, the seamstress from Montgomery, Alabama, who began the first great effort of the movement, the Montgomery bus boycott, which we learned about in school. Many heroic people died in the struggle for civil rights. Many others were injured or arrested or lost their homes or businesses. It is almost impossible to imagine the courage of the first African American children who walked into segregated schools, or the strength of the parents who permitted them to face the hatred and violence that awaited them. They did it in the name of the movement, in the quest for freedom. These people are true American heroes. They are the boys and girls, the women and men who have seen that things are wrong and have not been afraid to ask, why can't we change this? They are the people who believe that as long as one person is being treated unfairly, we all are. These are the heroes, and they still walk among us today. One of them may be sitting next to you as you read this, or standing in the next room making your dinner, or waiting for you to come outside and play. One of them may be you. Have a good rest of your day, and I will start a new book with you tomorrow.